Hey Trent Knights, welcome to the Tigers session for the week of May 18th. Let's get started with our reading, math, and writing learning targets. Reading. I can read to gather information from different sources. Writing. I can take notes using a circle graph. And math. I can define attributes of plane shapes. So we're going to be digging into these targets and defining some of those confusing words in them as I teach you what we're doing this week. So getting right to it, we're going to look at your packet. And here we have on page 7, source 3, let kids have a choice. Now, you'll remember last week we were working on reading some stories about musical instruments and school music programs. And in the next couple of weeks, we're really combining our reading work with our writing tasks. And these are called a performance task. So you're going to be collecting information as we go on different sources or different articles that we read. And eventually we're going to write about it. So this week we are going to read source 3, let kids have a choice. And so I'm going to read this to you, and then we are going to take notes. Now, I want you to think about that there are some questions after all of these stories, and I do want you to answer them. We're not going to go over these questions right now because we're going to be focusing on how to take notes. So if I scroll down, whoop, scroll up, whoop, I just saw it, come back here. Okay, so here's an example of a circle graph. Last week I took notes using this I already know facts that I learned and then questions that I still have format. This week we're going to do a circle graph. And I have to say I was a little nervous to do it because it looked too simple, but I actually really like doing it. And I might take notes like this in the future. So I hope you find it easy to do too. Okay, let's read it. And as I read, I'm going to show you how I took notes. Let kids have a choice. School music programs support the idea that all kids should play a musical instrument. They say it helps kids improve certain skills. It also helps them enjoy school more. But I disagree. Kids should not be forced to play a musical instrument. I have a hard time reading that because I disagree with what they disagree with. I think it's important to learn music, but this is a really good example of an opinion. And we all have different opinions, and that is okay. Now, here is a picture of my circle graph. It got a little squished, but you can take notes too. So pause the video and take out a piece of paper and draw a circle. And in the middle, you can start it with, kids should not be forced to play an instrument, or something like that. You could put the title of the article, Let Kids Have a Choice. Go ahead and put what the article is about in the middle of your circle. Okay, and now we're going to keep going, and I'll show you how I took notes. First of all, not all kids are the same. They are at different learning levels in school. They also have different responsibilities at home. Not every student will benefit from being taken out of class in the middle of the school day to learn to play music. Many students need to stay in class. They must work on their reading, writing, and math skills. So after I read that, I wrote my first word, which was different. And then I also wrote more time on academics, so I could remember why I wrote the word different. And I'm keeping this really simple. So when I go back to actually writing an opinion piece or a compare and contrast piece on these sources that we're reading, I might look at my circle graph, but I might have to go back and look at the article too to really remember the details of the ideas that I had on it. Okay, so going back, I'm going to keep reading. Also, Playing an instrument requires a lot of practice at home. A lot of students need to spend more time studying at home. They do not have time to practice their instruments. They might have other responsibilities too. It is unfair to add to their responsibilities. Okay, so then I wrote here stressful, but maybe you might want to write time or something else. Go ahead and take a minute to jot down your notes. You can pause the video and write down what are your ideas so far that you've learned from this passage. Okay, now we're going to keep going. Second, some students might have more musical talent than others. Some kids might try very hard to learn to play an instrument. They might work on it day after day, but they might continue to struggle with it. This can be very stressful because they must do something that is too difficult for them. It might have a negative effect. Soon, these kids might begin to dislike music instead of enjoying it. Forcing a child to play an instrument would have the opposite effect of what the school wants. Well, this guy kind of makes some good points, or girl. I don't know who wrote the article. But I wrote down the word abilities so that I could remember their point about people having different abilities, and maybe if it's just too hard and it might have the opposite effect of that it was intended. Maybe it's just bringing too much stress in a person's life to learn an instrument. Okay, here's the next paragraph. We're almost done. Third, it costs money to play an instrument. Families must spend money to rent or buy the instrument. It is unfair to require that every kid play an instrument and then make the family pay for it. Many families are on tight budgets. They may not be able to afford this activity for their children. So down here I wrote money. And the last paragraph says, finally, families should have a say in whether kids play an instrument. Kids should not be forced to do something that is not directly related to regular studies at school. Kids have few choices at school, and then often at home. They deserve to help decide if they want to spend their free time practicing an instrument or doing something else. Families should be allowed to discuss the idea together. Only then will they know if it is the right choice. For these reasons, schools should not force kids to play a musical instrument. And so then that brings me to the word choices, that people should have choices in what they want to do, and that it could be a family decision. So those were all the things that I took notes on, and I did it in a kind of a clockwise way. So you might want to do it that way too. So when you go back into the article, you can remember what you wrote down first and second and so on. So that's what I want you to do this week for writing, is make your own circle graph of notes on this article. If you haven't taken notes on source 2, you could do it for that one. And we did this one together last week for school music program. So you should have notes on that, but if you don't, you could make a circle graph. It wouldn't take you too much time. Okay, now we're going to scroll through, and you can see there's more things to read, more questions to answer. Please do that and send me one picture for reading, one picture for writing, one picture for math of the work you're doing. All right, now this is reminding me to show you what to do to get to the Go Math videos I showed you last week. What I want you to do is go ahead and go to the East Valley website, and then you're going to go to Families, and you're going to scroll down to Family Math Resources, and you're going to select the grade level you're in. For this video, I'll pick 3rd grade. And what you're going to do is you're going to eventually click on this button for Think Central, because that is where those Go Math videos are that I showed you last week. There's also some other really great links here if you need more online resources for math. But what you do is you click on there, then it's going to take you to a login page. Your login information is your student email address, and then the password is your 6-digit student ID number. So if you need this information, just text me or call me, email me, and I can get it for you if you want to watch those videos online for math. This week I'm not going to show you the video. I'm just going to talk about it from the packet. So if you'll notice here, there's a really fun project that you can do that incorporates art and shapes. So if you'll remember that my target was I can define attributes of plane shapes. Attributes is just a fancy word for describing the way the shape looks, like how many lines it has, or do they curve, how many angles and what kind of angles are there. And we're going to talk about that as we go. But I thought this would be a really fun project to cut out a bunch of different shapes and then glue them together like a mosaic for any kind of design you wanted to make. Moving right along, here is our page to help you learn about plane shapes. And that sounds intimidating, but it's not. All it means is that it's a shape with a closed figure. So we have traditional shapes that are like squares, triangles, but we also might have these other kinds of shapes that don't fit our traditional model of what we've learned so far. Like there's a little Pac-Man guy. But that would be a plane shape because it has all of these different things here. It's got a point, an exact position or location that you could show on the shape. It has a line, which is a straight path that goes in 2 directions without end, and points that are used to show segments of lines. So even though your lines might go off into space forever and ever, they will have an endpoint in your plane shape. Let me be really clear about that. A line segment is a part of a line that has 2 endpoints. An array is a part of a line that has 1 endpoint and continues on into 1 direction. So a plane shape is a shape on a flat surface. It's formed by points that make a curved path, line segments, or both. Plane shapes can be open or closed. Oh, Mrs. Vega made a little mistake, and that's okay. Even adults make mistakes as long as you learn. I was thinking about what I know about polygons, which is something you learn about in 5th or 6th grade. Those are closed shapes. So let me revise what I was saying, and that to tell you that a plane shape could be either closed or open. Cool, I learned something new. Okay, so you're gonna look at this plane shape and it's called a triangle. It is a closed shape. See, there's no openings. It's got 3 line segments, 1, 2, 3, and the line segments meet at the endpoints. So down here, they're gonna show you some describing words where you could circle all the words that describe the shape. Does the triangle have a line segment? Yes. Does it have a point ray? So does it just go off forever and ever, or does it stop? Well, there is a point, but there's not a ray because there is a closed shape. Is it a closed shape or an open shape? It's a closed shape. Oh, I'm just getting all confused here today. I'm really sorry. I was thinking we were talking about just the triangle, but they're talking about how to describe the shapes that they have right here on the page. See, you can learn from my mistakes too. So let's try this again. Is this a line or a line segment? I think it's a line segment because there's a cutoff point here and here. Is this a point or a ray? It's just a point. It's not a line that goes off in any direction. And I could remember by looking at my definitions up here. Is this a closed shape or an open shape? I would choose open because there's an opening right there. And here's an interestingly drawn one. Is it a closed shape or an open shape? It is a closed shape. And then here you're just going to write whether the shape is open or closed. So I appreciate you having grace with me, making mistakes. I thought that I looked at this carefully, but clearly there was a couple of things that I needed to learn too. That's another reason why it might be nice to double check your work when you are looking at the videos on the Go Math, because they will show you even more information about the plane shapes. Okay, now we're going to look at angles, and there are 3 ways we're going to describe angles in a big corner around this corner, which is called a right angle. So you can see that a right angle forms a square in the corner. And then another kind of angle is one that is less than a right angle. So this little dotted line shows where the right angle would be, and then it's just a little smaller or less than a right angle. And then there's another kind where it's bigger. So here is the right angle, and then the line just goes out a little further, creating this angle that is bigger than a right angle. Okay, so you can look at these different shapes and you can describe the angles. So you're going to say if it's a right angle, less than a right angle, or greater than a right angle. And I'm looking at this triangle, I see the angle they want us to see to talk about by looking at these lines. And we are going to say that that is less than a right angle because it matches the picture up here for less than a right angle. This one, ooh, it looks a little bigger because if I drew a line straight up and down, that would make my right angle, but this is greater than a right angle. And then this one, oh, super easy. I can see the square in the corner. That is definitely a right angle. So you're going to go ahead and go through and do this page, and there's also a couple other pages about angles. I hope you'll watch the Go Math videos and do the follow-up activities if you need more help. I appreciate you learning with me. I really love teaching and sometimes making mistakes because that is how you learn. So I will miss you, and I will see you again next week. Bye, Tigers.